Hello and welcome to Grassroots. I'm Nikki and today I'm going to show you around one of Rotherham's most beautiful community gardens in Rosehill GP surgery in Rollmarsh. And today we're going to find out the best ways to grow and tend runner beans and corn. Rosehill Community Garden is located in the grounds of the doctor's surgery in Rollmarsh. Jean McVan, the GP practice manager at the surgery, had set up some raised beds in the back garden. She wanted local people to grow vegetables for the area, but there was no one to organise the site, and so the beds became weed infested. At this point she was considering having them removed. However, the community gardening group, Rotherham in Route, heard about this situation and persuaded Jean to let them use the raised beds for 1 year. A few months later, all 12 beds had been cleared of weeds by volunteers, and potatoes, courgettes and marrows were planted. Later on, some of the produce was distributed to patients at the surgery and given to a homeless charity called Shiloh in Rotherham. As time went on, more and more volunteers joined in and began helping out at Rosehill. The Green-Fingered group have now cleared up the front of the surgery and planted flowers in the beds along the side. They've also planted flowers throughout the garden and made it look very beautiful. I'm here now with Dr. Hen from the surgery and also Sarah, who is the main coordinator as a volunteer of this garden. Dr. Hen, can you just tell us a little bit about what difference it's made having this project managing the garden?
It has certainly made an awful lot of just completely transformed the whole of the environment here, and certainly the community has been really interested in what we're doing, and also certainly, like with Sarah being the volunteers and the group of volunteers being here, coming every day, almost every day, and so that has made a lot of interest over not just the patients but also like the staff as well of the whole thing about how the community project is all about.
Right, yes, and I know she's put an awful lot of work into getting people involved and bringing in new volunteers, and then just making sure that everybody has got a space to grow their own things in, and knows where to find the tools, and just feels part of the project, and is fed lots of tea and various bits of cake during the day.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of credit is due to Sarah for making this project a real success.
Yes, definitely.
And now we're going to go and talk to Keith about growing runner beans. So we're standing in front of a bed where one of the volunteers has planted some runner beans. Keith, can you give us a little bit of advice about how to grow these?
Yeah, so these are the beans of summer. Yeah, from July to September you can just get a tremendous crop off these, and they're some of the prettiest vegetables you can have in your garden. You see red flowers, some are white. When you start growing these, it's really like starting last winter. You dig a trench, fill it with anything, newspaper, garden waste, compost.
Does it have to be well rotted or?
Not necessarily, because you put the soil back on and it'll consolidate over the winter, and you can always just check it as decomposed by just digging a bit up before you plant. You'd start probably about May time, either growing indoors or covering outdoors with some fleece, and you can...
What, planting seed directly?
Yeah, you can plant them direct that time, but usually you plant them a bit later. It's usually something about 12 weeks between sowing and getting the crop, and you can see that they get a lot of foliage on them, so they become quite hefty plants. And you've also got on this one some examples of where the ends have died because the beans have not been pulled off gently. You really need two hands to
pick
the
them.
beans off. So you don't, you just pull it like, hold it there and just pull it off like that. This is really a bit too small, so
to harvest.
Yeah, you need it a little bit longer. That said, that's really just too big. You can see the seeds of the beans showing through the skin. It'll be stringy and
tough,
not very pleasant to eat.
But that size there, you can put those in salads.
Yeah. Or
you can steam them. You can still eat them when they're that size, can't you?
Oh,
it's just if they get a little bit bigger, they're...
And they're nice and crisp, because look, they are. You can hear that sound, and they look really good. Okay, I'll just show you, if we got on here, the life cycle of the bean in effect. So you've got flower, you've got some immature beans there, and as you go down, the beans get longer and bigger. Some summers, because they are the vegetable of the warmth, so we had really hot summer, you may find that sometimes the flowers just drop without setting, so you just need to put a bit more moisture in. I tend to water, if it's dry, probably 4 or 5 days, every 4 or 5 days. Also, you can lose some of the flowers when some of the bees will just bite into the end.
The bees?
Eat the stamen inside without setting it, and then the flower just drops off. And you can come along and think, where's all my flowers gone to? And you've just had some naughty bees at it.
But presumably there's not much you can do about that.
No, there isn't really, no. Just have to hope that you grow really vigorous plants and they get a lot of flower and beans other than that. So if you look here on this one, just go into the support now, because I say they are heavy plants. You've got canes in like an inverted V, tied at the top. This is a classic way of growing them. It's a very sheltered spot here, so you're not going to get any wind, but sometimes you'll find that in a windy spot that's not the best way to support the beans. So if we go around to another part of the garden, we'll look at 2 other ways of using bamboo canes to support. I'm going to show you now how we can use canes to do some different sorts of supports. You have to remember that beans are heavy crops, and while this is a sheltered spot, you need to use something that will make it strong, because if the wind catches them, it can easily blow them over. Some people, where the space is a bit limited, but also if they want to grow them, because they are pretty crops, in the flower bed, is to use a wigwam.
That's a nice idea.
So I'll put 3 in, but usually you have 6. It gives a bit of a stronger structure, and then what you do is just tie it at the top with a bit of garden twine to give it stability there.
Right.
And then you put the plants at the bottom of each cane, or a couple of seeds, depends what
So
you
that they can grow up there.
Yeah,
the
just
canes.
train them up here. And because there's a lot of foliage, they tend to twine together and just form quite a nice grouping. The other way, if you've got a bit of a long space, is to form them as an X. So you put them like this, and then you put another one there, another one there, another one there, and you tie them here. The advantage of this is that you've got the top bit, which as they grow up it, the beans will hang outside, so they're easy to see.
Ah, right, so they don't get lost and you miss them rather than harvest them.
Yeah, the bits down here, they'll hang inside, but you can easily see them because they're just quite close to you. And also, because they twine round, I'll tie some horizontal canes across the top to allow some more training, and it just adds a bit more strength to the structure.
So the bean plants grow from the bottom of the pole, they grow up,
Yeah.
and then
Well,
you build those frames
yeah.
along.
So that's, I think, 2 simple ways using bamboo canes.
And I must say, I think they make very pretty flowers in the garden, because you've got nice white flowers and nice red flowers on them. So yeah, adding them to a border of ornamental stuff, I think is a really nice idea.
Yeah, they're some of the prettiest veg around, and some of the tastiest.
Yes. Next on the show, I'm going to get Keith to explain what's the best way to grow sweet corn. So, Keith, do you want to give us a little bit of a summary about what's the best way to get a good crop of corn?
Yeah, this is another summer crop. It doesn't need a great deal of water, so you can, as long as it's growing strongly, you can probably just forget about watering for long periods.
And do you plant from seed?
Although there's plenty of varieties now which mature earlier than they used to be, they still suffer the same thing, don't like root disturbance. So if you're starting indoors, say about April, May time, you'd plant some seeds in 3-inch pots, 9-centimetre pots, and let them grow indoors for a while till they're sizable, maybe 3 or 4 inches. Also, you need to be wary of any frost that may be coming. So You just need to be ready with a bit of fleece to pull them over if you think there's going to be a cold night.
So cover them over.
Yeah. The other thing that to be aware of is that because of the pollination method, which is the male flowers at the top and these are the female flowers, male pollen drops down onto the female cob and fertilises it that way. So you're planting a matrix in a square and not a row. And if you really want to sort of make it happen a bit quicker, you could just shake the stem and it just the pollen will just drop down. Otherwise, you can find that they don't pollinate properly.
So you should plant them in a clump and support them a little bit. We've got some string here just to give them a little bit of strength.
Yeah, because you can see that the stems are quite thick and rigid, but they, again, because of the height, they may catch the wind. But what you can do is put a mulch down, maybe 2 or 3 inches mulch around the crop, and then you get other roots growing from the stem into the mulch and into the ground, and it makes it a bit more stable. Well, you can see here there's a cob that's in theory ready for picking because the tassel's gone dark brown and a little bit wizen. If it's immature, it's usually quite silky. You can test the cob though, just to see whether it's at the maturity that you want. So what you do here is you'd pull the husk back to expose the corn, and then you test by pressing your nail into each seed.
And how do you tell? What does that do?
It'll release some juice, and if it's clear, it's immature, but if it's milky white, it's mature enough and it's ready for picking. And then what you do is you just pull it down, pull it off, and go and cook it. So you just press it with your nail into one of the kernels, and that's still clear. So what I do then is just push it back together, and it can continue growing for a few more days.
And how many weeks in total would it take to get from planting to maturity?
Probably about 12 to 14. Depends on the summer that we've got, because as I said earlier, they are a summer crop.
So they need the heat.
Yeah, they do really need the heat, and they are really worthwhile, growing now, because they don't store for days on end. They lose the sugars and they lose the freshness and the flavour.
So if you grow your own, then you can pick them and eat them the same day or the next day.
Just
and
get the
still
Barbie
taste
out.
Good.
Yeah.
Great. Now is the part of the show where we get to answer your questions, the grassroots Q&A. So I'm going to start off with one about compost. One particular theme that seems to crop up is whether or not tea bags are good things to put into compost. So I'm going to ask Keith that question.
I think the answer is not as simple as the tea bag itself. Here's a good example of a tea bag. The question about whether you can put them in like this all depends on the bag. Sometimes the bags are made of plastic woven, and sometimes they're made of unbleached paper. What you can do is just test it. Just collect a few. If you're a good tea drinker, you'll get through hundreds a year. So just collect a bag full of some tea bags, put them in the compost bin, and then go back to the compost bin in a week or two, see if the bag is starting to disintegrate.
But presumably you shouldn't put anything else on top of those bags so that you can actually see what's happening to them.
Well, I'd put something on, because then you've got a seal across the top,
right.
And then it's more like to compost quicker. If you find that the bag isn't composting, then just pull it apart and put the leaves in, and then you'd have to put the bag into the waste. I think it'd be quite nice if tea manufacturers put on the boxes that you could compost them. And the same with coffee grounds. If you're a coffee lover, you can just tip your coffee grounds out of your cafetiere and just put it into the compost bin. Previously, when people used to use loose leaf tea a lot, they used to just empty the teapot around the rose bush. It just made roses grow better. Whether it's an old lifestyle, I don't know, but my generation certainly used to go out with the pot and just tip the remains round the rose bush.
Well, there's a tip if you use tea leaves. Second question then. How can you check the viability of your seeds? If you've stored them for a whole year and you want to test them to see if they're actually still suitable for planting if they'll grow properly?
Well, I think most gardeners will come along in the spring and find they've got some seeds left from a few years ago. Packets now have got a date on and a sow-by date as well, but unless you're growing something like parsnips, which have got a short life anyway, there's lots of things that store really well. So as long as you've kept them sealed up in your packet, put them in something airtight. When you come to test it, some people will just sow the whole packet, but then that could be a waste.
Really?
Yeah, it could be a waste. So what you do is get a piece of kitchen paper on a saucer, wet it, and then put the seeds out you want to test just in a line, and roughly guess how many. Cover it in cling film, put it somewhere warm, keep it moist, and then go in a couple of weeks and just check. And if there's any viability in the seed, it should have sprouted by then. There'll be one or two that won't have come by that time, but usually 2 weeks for most vegetable seeds is long enough.
And we've got some examples here of seed that's been stored incorrectly, haven't we?
Yeah.
This box here, what we think has happened is the seed, it's a particular variety of bean called Borlotti, and some of them are a bit shriveled, some of them have got mould growing on them. And we think what's happened is that somebody picked the seeds and then put them in a sealed box when they were still damp.
Yeah.
Now if you do that, what you're doing is you're keeping the moisture inside the box. Seeds need to be kept absolutely dry and usually in a cool place as well. So we'd not advise you to store your seeds in this way.
Yeah.
Whereas something like this little envelope of seed, that's seed that's been around, stored in a dry packet, so the egg can get through it, and if there was any moisture in it, it gets dried out. So that's a good method for keeping seed.
Okay.
Moving on then, the last question is about growing winter crops. So again, Keith, can you tell us a bit about those?
Yeah, I think it is a difficult time because come August, September, you're clearing your plot of things like runner beans and tomatoes and so forth, and unless you're growing something like onions, people don't think of anything else. But there is a lot. I mean, turnips are a good example. You can sow them in August and you'll be cropping them late winter. You don't have to grow the real big turnips. You can grow really small ones now, and you can shred them and they're good in salads. And a lot of other winter crops are salad type crops: Chinese mustard, lamb's lettuce, corn lettuce. They may need a little bit of cover later on when it's snowing, but some of those seeds are like from Russia, like the Chinese mustard. It comes from the Far East, and they can put up with really cold temperatures, and there's no reason at all why you can't be eating salad stuff all year round.
And do you have to grow those inside, or can you still grow them outdoors?
Yeah, I've had winter lettuce outside under cloches. Just go down, you can either pick them as cut and come again, just take a few leaves off the side, or you could take the whole plant out. The other thing that you can start thinking about now is that having 2 crops a year on your plot. If you get into the habit of growing during the winter, then you could have garlic and winter onions in, crop them in June, July, and you're starting with your summer veg then in the same plot. You have to be really good on your crop rotation, obviously, but also making sure the soil's still very rich, that you're not taking too much out of the soil all the time. But it's really easy to do now.
Well, we've had a really amazing afternoon here at Rosehill in the community garden, but I'm afraid that's all for this week. Hope to see you soon again when we visit another one of Rotherham's community gardens. So, bye.